Hello and welcome to another edition of My Views with the News with me, Ian Pelham Turner, on ALB UK Television. Today we're going to discuss what might be the effects of business on Brexit and on the general election. And I'm joined by one of the founders of Positive Britain, Michael Spooner.
Hi.
Welcome, Michael.
Hi, Ian. Thanks for having me on.
So, one of the questions I was asked the other day as a political analyst was, do you think any change is going to happen after the general election? What do you think, Michael?
Well, Ian, look, the election was a bit of a shock. You know, they called the election. We now have to the 12th of December a 5-week process with both parties, all parties vying for our votes. But business, well, I think there's going to be change in that we may get clarification if one party gets a majority or we get a coalition that can form a majority, and that's going to be good for business. So businesses want clarity and they want decision making, and we've had a parliament, Ian, that couldn't or was unable to or incapable of making a clear decision for the country and for the economy and therefore for business. So businesses want clarity, and I think if we're lucky to get a majority formed out of this election, that's going to be a good thing. And secondly, both parties are the main parties. In fact, all parties are talking about public expenditure, big investment in public services, regeneration, lots of the things, education, health, lots of the things that business will help business indirectly or directly. And for those two good reasons, those are positive things that will come out of the election. But I hope there'll be less confusion and less uncertainty as well, because I think businesses are holding back, big and small, are holding back on investment, and we need a direction, a way forward, and I think the general election is going to help in that respect.
Right. I mean, I was listening to Boris Johnson. He did his outside number 10 speech to announce that he'd gone to the Queen to dissolve Parliament and to announce the general election. But for me, I thought there were a couple of how should we say, differences of opinion. One being he said he couldn't get Brexit through, which is not true. The reality was that the first stage of the Brexit bill had gone through.
That's right.
But it was only because he wanted the timing of 3 days to go through 140 odd pages of deal. He wanted to ram it through. And when he couldn't get that, that's when he called the general election.
Yes, that's it. I mean, I agree with you. I think Parliament are there to scrutinise potential legislation. He should have given them more time but of course the danger would have been that they would have added more amendments, added more conditions to the withdrawal bill, and that's something that he was trying to avoid, it sounds like. So I think he was wrong to put a 3-day restriction. I think that was unreasonable, because Parliament is sovereign and it's there to do a scrutiny job, among other things. And so I think Prime Minister Johnson, that was a mistake on his part, in our opinion. But nevertheless, it led to a general election. So in the sense, we're here now, and we're going to take things forward.
So in the past 24 hours, we've heard the Leader of the House of Commons condemn the residents of Grenfell, saying that he would have taken a more sensible approach. And then secondly, one of the ERG, the European Research Group, saying that they would have thought that having a more sensible approach to politicians would be a good thing for Parliament, forgetting that 70 odd people died in Grenfell. We've had one of the Welsh MPs for the Conservative Party resigned this morning, I think the head of the Welsh MPs. And we've had doctoring already of a video, which is just really the start of a lies campaign, similar to the false truths, false broadcasts, which started in America. So do you think we're following America in creating trends that are falsehoods?
Well, I think, unfortunately, the Trump phenomenon, the way when America comes up with a new type of strategy, Ian, in terms of communications, influence and winning elections, then of course unfortunately pick up their cold, pick up their viruses over here in Britain. But so some of that is true. But I think a lot of what you just spoke about is, I mean, Mr. Rees-Mogg is both a reprehensible and disgraceful behaviour for somebody who's a leader of a major party, or certainly in a leadership position of a major party. So at Positive Britain, we don't support that. In fact, we would be calling for his resignation if we had any influence over the process. But the Johnson administration is, I think their campaign has started off pretty badly. They're following a very negative strategy. Prime Minister Johnson called Jeremy Corbyn a Stalin, or some such phrase this morning. Yes. Bad politics, bad behaviour isn't going to lead to a good outcome. And so, and the Labour Party seems to have started their campaign reasonably stable and reasonably positive, and so has Liberal Democrats, and so has the Greens Party. So yes, it's up to the Conservatives to get their act together and get their behaviour correct, and start to behave themselves if they're going to really speak to the nation and speak to business and our people in the country. Yeah.
What do you think will make a more positive Britain for business right now? What would you like to see as the outcome? You're obviously a specialist in this field. Yeah. You've worked with the Federation of Small Businesses. Yeah. You're a major consultant in your own right as well for SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises. Yeah. What type of things do you think Britain needs right now for business to make it a success?
Yeah. Well, what business needs? Well, several things. First, at the economy level, at the kind of nationally, we need government to invest in the public sector, and particularly in high streets, regeneration programs. Be more careful with how we spend our taxpayers' money. Focus on the kind of digital investment in our digital future for this country, and both parties are picking that up. But really, we want at the economic level, we want the public sector investment, and both parties are committed to that, and we're pleased about that. But from a SME point of view, young people and entrepreneurs want education to be accessible, and because a lot of businesses, there's a correlation between starting a business and education, and so if you can access education, that usually leads to employment and self-employment. And so we want self-employment to be supported by government, invested in. We want taxes to be lower on smaller businesses, even if taxes have to go up on bigger businesses. We want taxes to be reduced on smaller businesses. And we want some kind of national support program, like we used to have with Business Link for London, a kind of Business Link for London Mark II, but for the whole country, for all communities around, so that business people can go to government and get funded support. We want government to do something about access to finance with the banking system. Banks are still withholding money for smaller businesses, and we want the financial sector to be urged to spend money. Remember Gordon Brown and the government did save the banking system, and I think they owe the British people and small businesses a debt, and they should really help small businesses in how they invest their money. We know they're commercial organisations, but they do need to look at the wider social responsibility in terms of investing in high streets and investing in small businesses. So those are some of the kind of simple things that government can do to make Britain positive and have a positive future. And let's stop the negative behaviour, negative communication, negative talk, and start to talk up Britain in a positive way. And leadership needs to start from the top, with the parties talking to each other in a reasonable way, behaving in an appropriate way, which is what we want at Positive Britain, for people to really focus on positive outcomes rather than the negative process.
Now, all the political parties at the moment are putting out big spending plans. That means increased borrowing.
Yeah, that's it.
But it could also mean increased taxation as well. Yeah. And so the two big costs for business at the moment in the high street is rents and rates.
Yes, that's right.
What would you like to see for both rents and rates for businesses in high streets up and down the country?
Right. Well, the business rate, I think the business rate brings in about 26 billion to government, and it's pretty stable regardless of how many businesses on the high street are created. The government seems to take in the same amount of money each year. So they can come up with the business rate system is pretty old and pretty outdated, and it does need reform. I don't expect the government to take in any less money from business rates, but it's who do you levy the rates on, and the formula that they use to levy the rates, which needs to be reformed, and so that we can stimulate people taking up shops and facilities on high streets. High streets are going to change now. They're going to be a much bigger mix of housing, leisure, and business on high streets. So they're going to be different places in the future. And so we do need the rate system to reflect that. Rents, I think rent controls or certainly making sure that rents are fair rents should be a concept that they need to start to think about in terms of encouraging landlords to not overcharge businesses. In fact, in some parts of we did some work in southeast London, and we found out that rents were going up about 29% on the high street, and that was literally forcing businesses to close, and the vacancy rate was going up as a result. So rates are going up by disproportionate amounts of
and it obviously affects businesses, doesn't it? Because
it's one of their major costs.
You know, we're talking this morning about mother care, and that's been put into administration.
That's right.
You were telling me just before you came on set that Jessop's, the camera people, had gone back into administration again.
That's correct, yes.
And there seems to be a total unfairness between the taxation of online business and business in the high street.
Yes, that's right. Yes, there is some work. I mean, the online businesses cost, their overheads are significantly lower. They don't pay as much tax, and there is something in the OECD internationally where we're meant to be agreeing some kind of arrangement for taxing online businesses. And that does need to be worked out. I think that's coming in next year, 2020, and maybe government does need to work out a fair balance between website or online business taxes, maybe some kind of enterprise tax that doesn't depend on the number of branches or number of physical assets. So maybe there's some kind of balancing out between online businesses and physical businesses. But again, the structure of your business is a business decision, Ian, and many of these businesses, even people like Mothercare, could have moved to an online platform and reduced.
And it's fair to say, of course, that this is only the Mothercare in UK.
Yes,
that the rest of the world is
fine, doing really well.
It's doing very well
and growing. Yes,
and what they're hoping again from a positive Britain point of view is that instead of having stores, which is the big cost, perhaps they might have facilities in other sort of retail outlets now.
That's right.
So to keep the Mothercare name going.
Yeah, so the brand can go and and concept, and they can work in partnership with other retailers. So Mothercare might be within other mainstream retailers, and of course people can buy it online. But of course, I think Mothercare needed to change the content on the profile of what they sold. I think the pricing was wrong, and they weren't as competitive with some of the other competitors like Adams or some of their other competitors. They needed to be more price competitive, and also the style of their products weren't keeping up with the time. So there were some issues, but that's an internal business thing for Mothercare, and they can easily address that if they want to. So you can see a big change in the structure of business in Britain. British business and is changing, and lots of international global pressures, lots of European pressures. Supply chains are so complex now in terms of manufactured goods, that when we come out of Europe, some of those supply chains are going to be severed and broken, and that's going to cause us
so you were talking just now about perhaps creating almost like an enterprise tax on online.
Yes.
One of the big promises from the Labour Party this morning is that they would drive down on people who bring their profits outside the country and claim they're in a different country for taxation.
Yeah.
Do you think that is good for business in Britain?
Yeah. Well, I think if you are trading in Britain, you're employing people in Britain, you have shops in Britain, you're taking money from British customers, then the taxes should be retained here and paid here. And I know there's some complexity internationally about this, but I think we should take a hard line on domicile. You know, if you're domicile here, if you're trading here, you need to pay taxes here. Because rather than registering your business in Luxembourg and paying taxes somewhere else. And so I think they do need to be, government can make a clear line on that. Clearly they have to think internationally on the implications of that, because other countries would do it to our businesses when we trade abroad. But I think that, yes, taxes in Britain, if you make money in Britain, you should pay taxes on that money you've made.
Yeah. So with Positive Britain now, I mean, there are three aims. One is to support SMEs, two is to work with communities and support communities, and three is to create an education system for disconnected teenagers.
Yeah.
Can you just talk very, very briefly about what values you think Positive Britain can actually bring to Britain today?
Yeah, I think when we think about our country and certainly the future is making sure our young people from all backgrounds and with all experiences, and some of our young people have had difficult experiences, not all of them, but some of them. We want to make sure that they can both access education. We can address some of their issues. Some of our young people have come from homes where parents can't support them as much as we would like, and therefore they don't start off their young lives in a way which would lead to employment and a kind of bright future. So government and at Positive Britain, we want to work on projects that will intervene in that process and help those disconnected users, which is why we use the phrase. They're kind of disconnected from the kind of mainstream systems that we expect all young people to go through. They go to college, university, or they get an apprenticeship, or they do some vocational learning.
I think part of the process for that education system is to actually teach disconnected teenagers journalistic skills and put them on a path where they can have a platform and a voice and talk positively about their community.
Oh yes, because of course a lot of our young people are very media savvy, they're very attracted to media, both radio, TV, broadcasting, journalistic, and they and they are quite attracted to speaking, and they've got a lot to say. Often their voice isn't heard, and if we can give them a project or a mechanism to present and speak and learn how to communicate, get that confidence back, put some of their ideas into practice, that is susceptible to social media and traditional media and kind of practical ways of marketing themselves, then I think that will be a way of teaching them some skills that they're going to have for life. Because if you can speak when they go for interviews, that's going to be good for them in their current jobs. When they go for interviews for university, when they can stand up for themselves when there's injustice, they're all going to need to be able to speak well, present themselves well, with confidence, and based on truth and values and wholesome values. So we're going to teach them that. So that's one aspect. Obviously, we talked about our view about SMEs. We think self-employment is a route to success for our young people and all people in our economy. So we encourage people to start up, and we support businesses and entrepreneurs and enterprise. So the education is one thing, the enterprise is another, and entrepreneurs as a kind of inspiring, because of the whole thing about Positive Britain is that we want to inspire, focus on positive outcomes rather than a kind of negative process, which in so much of our lives, people are quite negative, and that just feeds on itself.
And can we just feed on to the community as well?
Yes.
Do you think communities are divided as well? The country is divided
Yes,
between
yes.
Leave and Remain.
Yes.
Do you think communities are divided, and what do you think we can do to actually unite communities again?
Yes, well, you're seeing in the news, in most of the mainstream news, radio and TV, you're seeing lots of parts of our community going back into silos. So you've got the Jewish community, of course, is got some issues with parts of the Labour Party and their policies, and that's played out quite negative for the Jewish community. The Muslim community, again, with the Conservative Party and their issues around Islamophobia and so on. And so many communities are not happy with the way in which we are our multicultural settled view, or supposed settled view, that we were meant to have in this country. The Brexit process has divided us into Leavers and Remainers, which is people up north versus people down south, people with money versus people without money. So we got divisions, social divisions happening right across our communities, and there does need to be a way of bringing people together to see the things that unite us rather than the things that divide us.
And I think one of the methods that Positive Britain is going to use is to actually go out and film and highlight and bring people into the studios here as well in London to talk about their communities and highlight all the good things that communities bring to Britain.
That's right, because I mean, having a strong integrated and settled community. So we have to actually settle on what is great about this country, what makes Britain a fantastic place. It's still one of the best countries on the planet by far. We still have a fantastic fair justice system. We still, if you can still make it, if you're going to make it anywhere in the world, you can make it in the United Kingdom. And so it is a place with lots of things going for it. We've got, fantastic health service, fantastic broadcasting with the BBC and all those kind of institutions. So we have great things going on in this country, including our education system. But we do need to be careful that we don't allow ourselves to be divided. And so so Positive Britain is going to use broadcasting and good communication and good behaviour and put together projects to touch on and bring in young people to start with, disconnected youth, but all people who want to be entrepreneurs, all people that want to start businesses or are running businesses, to help them to put a positive view of what they do and what their views are for the future of this country.
And so I know Positive Britain launched last Friday, so it's very, very new.
Yes,
positivebritain.co.uk is the website for that. And hopefully, ALB UK Television will be supporting this, both in the field of SMEs, both in the field of obviously communities, and very effectively trying to help with disconnected teenagers.
Thank you.
Michael, thank you so much today for your great insight, as always, into these issues. As always, you've been very articulate, and it has worked so well for you.
Thank you, Ian. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. So from me, Ian Pelham Turner, on ALB UK Television, my view of the news, I say have a great day. For Michael and myself, have a very positive Britain day. Bye for now.